The poor Apache widow stole the rancher's horse, but his reaction shocked everyone. The wind carried the faint sound of children laughing in the distance, but the laughter made her chest ache rather than warm her heart. Her own children were huddled inside their small, worn cabin, shivering against the cold that had settled over the plains like a thick, gray blanket. Since her husband's death more than a year ago, life had been a constant struggle, and lately, it had been harder than ever. Maria remembered her husband, Thomas, clearly. He had been a kind and hardworking man, a skilled hunter who could track deer through the forest and find water where others only saw dry land. Together, they had built a small but comfortable home on the edge of the town. They had dreams, simple dreams, enough food to eat, a warm place to sleep, and a future where their children could grow up safely. But all those dreams had vanished the night Thomas fell ill. The illness came suddenly and cruelly, and despite Maria's desperate efforts to care for him, he had died, leaving her alone with two small children and no way to support them. Life after Thomas had been nothing but struggle. Maria tried to earn money by working odd jobs for the townspeople, but work was scarce. The men were too busy with their own ranches and cattle, and the women had little time for hiring help. Some days she would gather wild herbs or dig roots from the rocky soil to feed her children, but it was never enough. Sometimes she would walk for miles to the river to catch fish, only to return with nothing but empty hands and a heavy heart. Her children, little Anna and James, often went to bed hungry, and Maria could feel the guilt pressing down on her like a stone. She hated seeing the worry in their eyes, the way they tried to hide their hunger from her, because she knew it was impossible to hide. Winter had come early that year, harsher than anyone in Red Creek could remember. Snow blanketed the hills, and the wind whipped through the town with icy fingers. The small cabin that had once seemed warm and safe now felt like a prison. The fire in the hearth burned low, and the food stores were gone. Maria's children huddled together under thin blankets, shivering. While she tried to keep the fire going with scraps of wood, she scavenged from the nearby forest. She told them stories to keep their minds off the cold, stories of animals in the forest, of Thomas hunting deer, and of a time when life had been easier. But the smiles she painted on their faces were fragile, breaking as soon as they returned to the reality of an empty stomach. As she sat in the cabin that night, Maria thought of every option she had. She had already asked the townspeople for help, but few were willing to give more than a passing glance. Some whispered that she had been careless with her husband's legacy, that she was weak, that she should have been able to manage better. Their words cut deeper than the cold ever could. She knew that no one would truly understand her situation unless they had lived it themselves. She had worked hard, been honest, and yet she was forced to watch her children suffer. Her mind wandered to the outskirts of town, to the large ranch owned by Mr. Thompson. His property was the largest in the county, and he was known for having the finest horses anyone had ever seen. They were strong, fast, and well-fed, horses that could make even the longest journey seem effortless. Maria had seen them from a distance many times, and each time her heart ached. She had never thought of stealing before. It was against everything she believed in. But now, desperation clouded her judgment. She thought of Anna and James, their small bodies shaking with cold, their stomachs empty, their eyes pleading. She felt a wave of despair unlike anything she had felt before. The thought that had once seemed impossible began to take root. If she could just take one horse, not to sell it but to ride into town or the neighboring settlements, she could find food and medicine for her children. She did not want to steal from Mr. Thompson out of greed. She wanted to survive. She wanted her children to survive. Every night she lay awake imagining the horse carrying her safely through the snow, imagining the relief on her children's faces when she returned with something to eat. The idea terrified her, but it also gave her a spark of hope that she had not felt in months. Maria began to prepare. She knew the ranch was guarded, though not by men with guns as much as by the natural obstacles of the land, fences, gates, and the sharp eyes of the ranch hands who worked the property during the day. She spent days observing the ranch from the hills, noting the patterns of the workers, the times when the horses were fed, and the quiet hours of the night when the property was nearly empty. Each night she returned to her cabin, her heart pounding, thinking through every possible risk. Her children sensed the tension in her and asked why she seemed so worried, but she could only smile and tell them stories to keep them calm. Finally, one night, the snow falling gently around her cabin, Maria decided she had no choice. Her children were too weak, the food too scarce, and the cold too bitter. She wrapped herself in a thick blanket, tied her hair back, and crept into the darkness. Her hands were numb, but her resolve was stronger than ever. Every step toward the ranch felt like a step into a world she had never entered before, a world of danger, judgment, and the unknown. She could hear the crunch of snow under her boots and the distant howl of wolves in the hills. Every sound made her flinch, but she pressed on, imagining the look of relief on Anna and James' faces when she returned with help. As she approached the ranch, the first sight of the horses took her breath away. They were more magnificent up close than she had imagined, their coats shining even under the moonlight, their muscles rippling as they moved. She could see the fearsome beauty in their eyes, the strength in their legs. It pained her to think of taking one, but she reminded herself it was not theft for greed. It was survival. Her heart pounded as she crept closer, trying to calm the fear rising in her chest. She had to act carefully, quietly, and quickly, or everything would be lost. Finally, she made her choice. One horse, a strong chestnut mare with a gentle eye, seemed to sense her desperation. Maria approached slowly, whispering soft words to calm the animal. To her relief, it did not shy away. With trembling hands, she fastened the reins and prepared to lead it away from the ranch. Her mind raced with questions. What if she was caught? What if the horse panicked? What if something went wrong? But as she looked down at the mare's trusting eyes, she felt a surge of courage. She was doing this for her children, and that alone gave her the strength to move forward. As she led the horse into the open plains, Maria's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and hope. She knew the townspeople would never understand why she had taken the horse, but she also knew she could not turn back. Each step carried her further from the ranch and closer to her children, closer to the food and warmth they so desperately needed. The wind cut across her face, but it could not freeze the determination in her heart. For the first time in months, Maria felt a flicker of hope. The long night ahead would be dangerous, and the journey back would test her in ways she could not imagine, but she would face it. For Anna and James, she would face anything. The snow-covered plains stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, but she no longer felt small against the world. She had a purpose, a reason to fight, and a goal worth every risk. And in that quiet moment, under the pale moonlight, Maria realized that even in the darkest times, courage could be found in the most desperate of hearts. The cold night air bit at Maria's cheeks as she crept closer to the ranch. Every sound made her heart leap, an owl hooting in the distance, the rustle of dry grass, even the faint clatter of loose boards on the ranch fences. She paused repeatedly, holding her breath, listening for any sign that someone might discover her. Her mind raced with worry. What if the ranch hands were awake? What if the horses panicked? What if she was caught before she could even help her children? The questions threatened to paralyze her, but she forced herself to move forward. Maria had thought about this night countless times. She had planned each step carefully, studying the layout of the ranch during the day from a safe distance. She had memorized the path to the barn, noting where the fences had gaps and which gates were usually left unlocked. She knew Mr. Thompson's ranch hands worked late into the night feeding the animals, but she had timed her approach to coincide with the few minutes when the barn would be quiet. Every detail mattered, and yet Standing at the edge of the property, she felt the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Her children's faces flashed before her eyes. Anna's small hand clutching at the blanket to stay warm, James shivering as he tried to sleep despite his hunger. They had depended on her for so long, and now, in this desperate hour, she had no choice but to risk everything. She whispered a soft prayer under her breath, asking for strength, for courage, and for a way to succeed. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped forward into the shadow of the barn. The mare she had chosen waited patiently in the corner of the fenced area. Maria's heart skipped a beat when she saw her. The animal's chestnut coat shimmered faintly under the moonlight, and her gentle eyes seemed almost to understand Maria's intent. It was as if the horse could feel the desperation in her heart. Maria approached slowly, her hands trembling as she reached out to stroke the mare's neck. "Easy," she whispered, trying to calm both herself and the horse. The mare snorted softly but did not shy away, and Maria felt a surge of hope. She quickly unfastened the rope that tied the horse to the post. Every sound now seemed amplified: the crunch of snow beneath her boots, the soft creak of the barn door as it swayed in the wind, the distant howl of a wolf. Her pulse raced as she led the horse toward the open field beyond the fence. She knew she had only minutes before someone noticed the horse missing. Every second counted. As she moved through the snow-covered pasture, Maria's mind replayed every story she had ever heard about theft and punishment. Her heart pounded at the thought of being caught, but she reminded herself that this was not about greed. This was about survival, about her children, about keeping them alive through the harsh winter. She gritted her teeth, feeling a strange mixture of fear and determination. With each careful step, she felt herself moving closer to hope, closer to her family, and farther from the despair that had shadowed her for months. The open plains stretched ahead of her, blanketed in snow that glistened faintly under the moonlight. The mare moved steadily, almost as if she understood the urgency of the journey. Maria clutched the reins tightly, guiding the horse through the uneven terrain. Her legs were cold, her fingers numb, but she pressed on. She thought of her children again, imagining the relief on their faces when she returned with food and warmth. That image kept her moving, even as exhaustion threatened to slow her down. Hours passed as Maria navigated the rough, snow-covered land. The cold seeped through her clothing, making her teeth chatter, and her legs ached from riding for so long. Yet she dared not stop, knowing that even a moment of hesitation could mean discovery. The wind whipped through the open plains, carrying flakes of snow into her face, but she refused to let it deter her. Each gust seemed to whisper a warning, but Maria focused on the soft sound of the mare's hooves against the ground, drawing strength from the steady rhythm. Eventually, she reached a small, frozen stream. The mare stopped, lowering her head to nibble at the sparse grass that poked through the snow. Maria dismounted carefully, patting the animal's neck. "Almost there," she whispered, trying to reassure both the horse and herself. She knew the town was still some distance away, but she also knew that once she reached it, she could find food and supplies for her children. She allowed herself a brief moment of relief before continuing, her body stiff and aching, but her spirit determined. The night seemed endless as she rode, the stars overhead offering little comfort against the biting cold. Maria's thoughts drifted to the townspeople, to the whispers and judgments that would surely follow her actions if anyone ever found out. She did not care. She had no time to worry about opinions. She only had time to survive, to keep her children alive, and to make it through the long night. Finally, as the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, Maria saw the edge of Red Creek in the distance. Her heart lifted, and she felt a small burst of triumph. She had made it this far without being seen, without being caught, and with her courage intact. The town still seemed quiet, the streets empty, but she knew that soon the day would awaken, and with it the scrutiny of the townsfolk. She urged the mare forward, moving carefully to avoid drawing attention. Maria led the horse to a hidden spot behind an abandoned cabin on the outskirts of town. Here, she could catch her breath and plan her next steps. She examined the mare, checking for any signs of injury or exhaustion. The animal seemed calm, trusting Maria completely, and that trust gave her courage. She whispered softly to the mare, praising her patience and strength. "We're almost there," she said. "Just a little further and your work will save my children." The town still slept as Maria carefully tied the mare to a tree, ensuring she would not wander off. Then she ran, slipping silently through the snow toward her cabin. Each step felt heavier than the last, her body aching from the cold and exertion, but the thought of her children pushed her forward. When she finally reached the cabin, Anna and James stirred from their sleep, sensing her presence. Their eyes widened as they saw Maria standing at the doorway, a small bundle in her arms. Maria quickly fed her children the food she had managed to gather, her hands trembling from cold and exhaustion. She watched as they ate, their eyes brightening with each bite. The relief in her heart was overwhelming. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, a sense that perhaps the darkness that had surrounded them was beginning to lift. Her children's laughter, though small and fragile, echoed in the cabin and warmed her soul. Yet even in this moment of temporary triumph, Maria knew the danger was not over. The townspeople would soon notice the missing horse, and questions would be asked. She could already imagine the whispers, the suspicion, the blame. But for now, she focused on the warmth in her children's eyes, on the life she had managed to preserve through courage and determination. She knew that whatever came next, she had taken the first step towards survival. As the sun rose, casting a pale light over the snow-covered landscape, Maria sat by the fire, holding her children close. She thought of the long journey ahead, of the challenges she would face in the coming days, and of the choices she would have to make. But she also thought of the strength that had carried her this far, the courage that had allowed her to take a risk that no one else might have understood. In that quiet morning, surrounded by the small warmth of her family, Maria felt a new sense of determination. She had acted out of desperation, yes, but she had also acted out of love, a love that gave her the strength to face any obstacle. The night's events would change everything. Maria knew it, though she did not yet know how. The stolen horse was not just an animal. It was a symbol of her courage, her desperation, and her unbreakable love for her children. It represented the thin line between survival and despair, the choices that defined a person in the harshest of circumstances. And as she looked at Anna and James, smiling despite their hunger, she knew that no matter what happened next, she would do whatever it took to protect them. Maria had hoped the night would pass without incident, but she knew that was unlikely. Mr. Thompson, the rancher, was a man known for his keen eye and quick temper, especially when it came to his prized horses. She had hoped that by keeping to the shadows and moving carefully, she might avoid confrontation entirely. But deep down, she understood that the journey she had taken, no matter how careful, could not go unnoticed forever. That morning, as the pale sun began to rise over Red Creek, Maria was already awake, tending to her children and making sure the mare remained calm and comfortable. The horse had been patient through the long ride and the cramped hiding spot behind the abandoned cabin, and Maria rewarded it with gentle words and careful attention. She could hear her children talking softly to each other, their laughter a fragile thread of happiness in a house filled with struggle. Maria wished she could linger in the moment, but a gnawing worry tugged at her heart. She knew that sooner or later Mr. Thompson would discover his missing horse. As she prepared a small breakfast for Anna and James, a distant sound reached her ears, the unmistakable sound of galloping hooves on hard ground. Maria froze, her heart thumping violently. Could it be him? She ran to the window, pressing her face to the frost-covered glass, and saw a figure approaching through the snow. It was a man on horseback, tall and commanding, riding with a steady determination that made Maria's blood run cold. Mr. Thompson. There was no mistaking him. Maria's mind raced. She had no weapons, no way to defend herself, and nowhere to run without risking leaving her children alone. She felt the sharp sting of fear, but she also felt the weight of responsibility pressing her forward. She could not show panic. She had to think clearly, and she had to protect her children. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door cautiously, stepping into the cold morning air to meet him. Mr. Thompson's eyes scanned the area carefully, his gaze sharp and authoritative. As he approached, Maria's pulse quickened. She could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the reins tightly. She knew he had tracked the horse here, following the trail through the snow, and he had come expecting anger, confrontation, and perhaps even theft. Maria's stomach churned with anxiety. How could she explain herself without sounding like a criminal? How could she make him understand that she had acted out of desperation, out of love for her children, and not out of greed? "Are you Maria?" he asked, his voice firm but not yet harsh. His eyes were fixed on her, and she could see the mix of suspicion and curiosity in them. Maria nodded slowly, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She swallowed hard, gathering the courage to speak. "Yes, sir," she said softly. I need to explain." Mr. Thompson dismounted from his horse, his boots crunching in the snow. He looked at her expectantly, his expression unreadable. Maria took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. She told him everything, about Thomas, about the struggle to survive, about the long winter and the empty cupboards. She spoke of her children, their hunger, their shivering, and her desperate need to keep them alive. She did not try to excuse her actions, nor did she attempt to hide the fact that she had taken his horse. Instead, she told the truth, hoping that honesty might sway him. Mr. Thompson listened quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. He did not interrupt, did not scold, and did not show immediate anger. He seemed to be taking in every word, considering the situation carefully. Maria felt a flicker of hope but did not dare relax. She continued speaking, describing how she had carefully chosen the horse, how she had treated it with respect, and how she intended to return it once her children were safe. She explained that this was not theft for profit, but an act of survival, and she hoped he could understand the difficult position she had been placed in. The silence after she finished speaking was heavy, almost unbearable. Maria held her breath, waiting for the expected anger, the shouting, or the accusation that would surely follow. Instead, Mr. Thompson remained quiet, looking down at the snow, then back at her. His expression softened slightly, and for the first time since she had seen him approaching, Maria felt a glimmer of hope. She did not know what he was thinking, but she sensed a change in his demeanor, a shift from anger to something else, something she could not yet name. Finally, Mr. Thompson spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You took my horse," he said plainly. "Do you realize the risk you took? Do you understand the trouble this could have caused?" Maria nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, sir," she replied. "I understand and I am sorry. But I had no other choice. My children, they needed me." He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words, trying to decide if they were true or if she was merely clever in her explanation. Maria felt the weight of his gaze, the judgment that seemed to press down on her chest. She had faced harsh winters, hunger, and the death of her husband, but the fear in this moment felt sharper, more real. She realized that her entire life, all her struggles, had come to this single point, a confrontation that could change everything. Then something unexpected happened. Mr. Thompson's expression softened even further. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. "I can see that you acted out of love, not malice," he said. "I can see the courage it took to do what you did, even if it was risky." Maria's eyes widened, disbelief mingling with relief. She had expected punishment, ridicule, or anger, but instead she heard understanding and even a hint of admiration. "You must understand," he continued. "This horse is valuable and it cannot be taken lightly. But I can also see that your intentions were true. You wanted to save your children, not to steal for personal gain." Maria nodded quickly, tears forming in her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. She had never expected such kindness from a man she had feared would punish her. "Mr. Thompson gestured toward the mare. "Lead her back," he said. "Care for her well, and I will help you in whatever way I can. You will not have to steal to keep your children fed. We can find another way." Maria could barely believe what she heard. She had expected anger, not generosity. She had expected punishment, not compassion. The townspeople's whispers, the judgments she had imagined, they did not matter now. What mattered was that someone understood her, someone saw her struggle, and someone offered help rather than condemnation. For the first time in months, Maria felt a sense of relief so profound that it brought tears to her eyes. She knelt to stroke the mare's neck, whispering words of gratitude to the animal that had carried her through the night. Then she turned to Mr. Thompson, who was watching her with a steady, calm expression. She wanted to thank him, to express the depth of her gratitude, but she knew words would never be enough. Instead, she bowed her head in silent appreciation, letting her actions speak where words could not. "Mr. Thompson nodded once, as if acknowledging her gratitude, then mounted his own horse. "Go back to your cabin," he said. "I will speak to the townspeople. No one will interfere. You have acted bravely, and you deserve a chance to care for your children without fear." Maria watched him ride away, her heart full of a mixture of awe and relief. She could hardly believe the turn of events. The man she had feared would punish her had instead shown compassion and understanding beyond anything she could have imagined. As the day wore on, Maria returned to her cabin with the mare, tending to her children and preparing a proper meal for them for the first time in many weeks. She felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The fear that had gripped her for months began to lift, replaced by a quiet strength. She realized that courage, honesty, and love could open doors that fear and desperation could not. She had risked everything, and through that risk, she had found a path not only to survival, but also to dignity and respect. The events of that morning would stay with Maria forever. She had faced a man of power and influence, a man who could have punished her severely, and instead, she had been met with understanding and generosity. She thought of her husband, Thomas, and imagined how proud he would have been of her courage and determination. And most importantly, she thought of her children, whose lives she had managed to protect through a bold act of bravery. Maria knew that this encounter was only the beginning. The road ahead would still be difficult, and challenges would arise that required strength, courage, and resilience. But she also knew that with honesty, determination, and a willingness to act out of love, even the most desperate situations could be met with unexpected kindness. That morning, she learned a lesson that would shape her life forever, that the heart's courage could inspire compassion in others, even those who seemed unyielding and stern. Word of the missing horse spread quickly through Red Creek. Whispers traveled from cabin to cabin, carried by neighbors who were always quick to pass judgment before understanding the full story. Most assumed the worst, imagining that someone had taken the horse for selfish reasons. "The mare is gone." "Can you believe it?" a woman whispered to her friend at the market. "Who would dare steal from Mr. Thompson? He'll be furious." But as morning turned to afternoon, it became clear that the situation was unlike anything anyone had expected. Mr. Thompson had returned to town, not with anger, but with the mare safely beside him and Maria at the center of a story that no one had anticipated. The townspeople were shocked, their eyes widening with disbelief. Rumors spread quickly. The widow had stolen the horse, but instead of punishment, the rancher had forgiven her and even offered help. Maria felt the weight of the townspeople's stares as she moved through the streets. She had hoped to keep her presence quiet, but curiosity and gossip made that impossible. Some looked at her with suspicion, some with pity, and a few with quiet admiration. She held her head high, refusing to let fear control her actions. Her children clung to her skirts, sensing the tension, but also trusting their mother to navigate the strange world outside their cabin. The whispers grew louder as she approached the main square, where a small crowd had gathered, drawn by curiosity and the promise of news. "Is it true?" someone called. "The widow stole Mr. Thompson's horse." Another voice added, "And he let her keep it." The questions hung in the cold air, sharp and uncertain. Maria's heart beat fast, but she reminded herself that she had acted out of love and necessity, not greed. She had done what she had to do to protect her children. Mr. Thompson stepped forward to address the crowd. His voice carried across the square, calm yet commanding. "Maria did take my horse," he said plainly, "but she did so out of desperation, not malice. She acted to protect her children, to provide for them during a harsh winter. In my eyes, her intentions were noble, and she has my support." The crowd fell silent. People exchanged glances, unsure how to react to this unexpected declaration. Some townspeople shook their heads, unable to reconcile the story with what they had always believed about theft and punishment. "But she took a horse," one man muttered under his breath. "Surely there should be consequences." Others began to soften, realizing that Maria's actions were not selfish but deeply human. Children's survival, especially in such harsh conditions, was a concern that transcended property and rules. Slowly, understanding began to replace suspicion. Maria's eyes searched the crowd, catching glimpses of faces she had known all her life. There was old Mrs. Henderson, who had always been critical of her, and yet even she seemed to hesitate before speaking. A few younger women nodded quietly, perhaps recognizing the struggle Maria had faced as a widow trying to protect her children. The tide of opinion was shifting, slowly but surely. People began to see Maria not as a thief, but as a mother who had acted out of necessity. In the days that followed, Mr. Thompson made good on his promise. He offered Maria temporary work on his ranch, allowing her to earn food and supplies for her children honestly. At first, Maria hesitated, unsure if she could meet the expectations of such a respected man. But Mr. Thompson's calm confidence and encouragement reassured her. She accepted the offer, grateful for the opportunity to rebuild her life and provide for her family without resorting to further desperation. Working on the ranch was challenging, especially in the winter months. The cold was relentless, the snow deep, and the labor physically demanding. Maria rose before dawn each morning, feeding the animals, mending fences, and helping wherever she was needed. Her muscles ached, her hands became calloused, but she pressed on. Every task she completed brought a small sense of pride, a quiet affirmation that she was capable of more than survival. She was capable of thriving. Her children helped when they could, small hands assisting with chores or bringing firewood to the cabin. They began to smile more often, their laughter gradually returning as their bellies were filled with regular meals. The cabin, once a place of despair, became a place of warmth and hope. Maria could see the change in her children's eyes, the relief, the joy, and the confidence that comes from feeling safe. She felt a similar change within herself. No longer constantly overwhelmed by fear and desperation, she began to see a future that was slowly becoming attainable. The townspeople, too, began to adjust to the new reality. They watched Maria work tirelessly on the ranch, her determination and skill evident in every action. Slowly, admiration replaced doubt. People began to recognize her resilience and strength, qualities that had been hidden beneath layers of poverty and struggle. Children from the town started visiting Anna and James, drawn by curiosity and eventually by friendship. Maria welcomed them, knowing that fostering connections and community was just as important as providing food and warmth. Some of the townsfolk even approached Maria to offer help, quietly at first, with small gestures like extra firewood or a basket of vegetables. These gestures were not accompanied by judgment but by genuine care, and Maria accepted them with humility. She knew that pride had sometimes kept her from asking for help, but she also knew that accepting kindness did not diminish her strength. It allowed her family to survive and grow stronger. Mr. Thompson continued to support Maria in ways beyond employment. He provided guidance on caring for the horses, advice on managing the small garden behind her cabin, and encouragement that gave her confidence in her abilities. Maria listened closely, learning quickly and applying her knowledge with care and diligence. She began to see herself not only as a survivor, but as someone capable of making meaningful contributions to the community. The mare, once a symbol of fear and desperation, became a companion in this new chapter of Maria's life. The horse followed her as she moved between the ranch and her cabin, strong and steady, patient and trusting. Maria cared for her with love and attention, brushing her coat, feeding her, and speaking softly to calm her during storms or moments of nervousness. The bond between them grew stronger each day, a quiet reminder that even in difficult times, trust and loyalty could thrive. Despite the growing acceptance from the town, not everything was easy. Some people still whispered, judging her past actions and questioning whether forgiveness had been the right choice. Maria ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on her children, her work, and the small joys that life now offered. She knew that not everyone would understand her, and that was acceptable. What mattered most was the trust and support she received from those who counted: the children, the mayor, and Mr. Thompson. As weeks passed, the town began to view Maria as an example of courage and resilience. Mothers spoke of her determination to care for her children, young women admired her strength, and even the men came to respect her work ethic. The story of the stolen horse transformed into a tale of bravery and compassion, illustrating that circumstances could compel people to act in unexpected ways, and that understanding and kindness could change lives. Maria's children flourished under the newfound stability. Anna's laughter rang out as she played in the snow with other children, and James's eyes sparkled with curiosity and excitement. The constant worry that had once dominated their lives diminished, replaced by a sense of security and belonging. Maria watched them with pride, knowing that every decision she had made, no matter how risky, had contributed to this moment. And through it all, Mr. Thompson remained a steady presence. His initial shock at Maria's actions had transformed into admiration and respect. He recognized her courage, honesty, and determination, qualities that were rare in anyone, regardless of social standing. By offering guidance, support, and forgiveness, he had not only helped Maria and her children survive the winter, but had also fostered a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Maria often thought about how her life had changed in just a few short weeks. From a place of fear and desperation, she had moved into a life where hope, community, and resilience flourished. The stolen horse, once a source of potential punishment, had become the key to this transformation, symbolizing courage, survival, and the power of understanding. She realized that even in the most difficult circumstances, kindness and empathy could create opportunities for renewal and growth. By the time spring arrived, the snow had melted, and the town of Red Creek had fully embraced Maria and her children. The widow who had once been overlooked and judged harshly was now a respected and admired member of the community. Her story spread, not as a tale of theft, but as a story of bravery, compassion, and the unexpected ways in which people could help one another. Maria's journey had transformed her from a figure of pity into a symbol of resilience, demonstrating that courage and honesty could inspire understanding and create lasting change. Spring had arrived in Red Creek, and with it, a sense of renewal and hope that Maria had not felt in months. The snow had melted, leaving the plains soft and green, and the air carried the fresh scent of growing plants and blooming flowers. For Maria and her children, life was no longer a constant struggle for survival. The harsh winter had tested them, but they had endured, and with the support of Mr. Thompson and the growing respect of the townspeople, a brighter future was slowly taking shape. Maria rose each morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The small cabin she called home was warm and welcoming now, filled with the sounds of her children's laughter and the soft nickers of the chestnut mare who had carried her through the darkest nights. The mare had become more than just a horse. She was a companion, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder of the courage it had taken to survive. Maria brushed her coat each morning, whispering words of gratitude for the steadfast loyalty of her friend, and felt a quiet satisfaction that came from caring for something beyond herself. Her days were busy, filled with work on Mr. Thompson's ranch and tending to her own small garden behind the cabin. She fed the animals, repaired fences, and learned the finer points of horse care under the rancher's guidance. Mr. Thompson had proven to be a patient teacher, offering advice and encouragement without condescension. Maria absorbed every lesson, her hands growing calloused and strong, her mind sharp and attentive. She discovered a sense of pride in her work that she had not known before. Each task completed, each obstacle overcome, felt like a small victory, a step toward a future built on her own strength and determination. Anna and James thrived in the new stability of their lives. Gone were the days of empty stomachs and restless nights. The children laughed freely, their energy returning as they explored the small woods behind the cabin, played with neighbors' children, and helped with chores around the ranch. Maria watched them with a mixture of pride and relief, knowing that her decision to risk everything for their survival had been the right one. She saw in their eyes a reflection of hope and security, and it filled her heart with a deep, abiding joy. The townspeople, too, had adjusted to the new reality. Maria's courage and determination had earned their respect, and her presence became a valued part of the community. People who had once whispered behind her back now greeted her with nods of acknowledgement and quiet smiles. Some asked for her advice on small matters, recognizing her intelligence and resilience. Others offered small gifts, extra vegetables, fresh bread, or firewood, gestures of goodwill that Maria accepted with humility, grateful for the sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. The story of the stolen horse, once a source of scandal and gossip, had transformed into a tale of courage and compassion. The townspeople spoke of Maria's bravery, of how she had acted out of love and desperation rather than greed. They marveled at Mr. Thompson's kindness, his decision to forgive rather than punish, and the way he had provided support and guidance to help the widow rebuild her life. Children were told the story as a lesson in empathy, courage, and the power of understanding, while adults saw it as a reminder that even in difficult circumstances, acts of kindness could have profound effects. Maria herself reflected on the events that had brought her to this point. She remembered the fear and desperation of that cold winter night, the uncertainty as she led the mare across the snow-covered plains, and the moment she had met Mr. Thompson face to face. She realized that her courage had not only saved her children, but had also revealed a truth she had long suspected, that compassion and understanding could inspire change in even the hardest of hearts. That knowledge became a guiding principle in her daily life, shaping her interactions with neighbors, friends, and even strangers who crossed her path. The mare, once a symbol of risk and survival, became a source of joy and companionship. Maria taught her children to ride carefully, to respect the horse, and to care for her as they would a family member. Anna and James learned quickly, laughing as they balanced on her back and guided her through the open fields. The bond between the children and the mare grew strong, teaching them lessons in patience, responsibility, and trust. Maria watched them with pride, recognizing that these simple lessons of care and love were as valuable as any other skill she could teach them. With time, Maria also began to find moments of personal growth. She had always been strong, but the challenges she faced had tested her in ways she had never imagined. She learned to trust her instincts, to act decisively in moments of uncertainty, and to find strength in vulnerability. She realized that asking for help was not a sign of weakness, but a recognition of human interdependence. This realization allowed her to build deeper connections with the townspeople and to foster a sense of community that had been absent from her life for so long. One day, as she worked in the garden behind her cabin, Mr. Thompson approached, riding slowly on the chestnut mare. He dismounted with a friendly smile, his presence calm and reassuring. "Your garden is thriving," he said, nodding with approval. "I can see you've put your heart into it." Maria smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you, sir," she replied. "It helps the children and me. We're learning to care for more than just survival now." Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "It's good to see," he said. "You've turned a difficult situation into an opportunity. That's a lesson worth remembering." Their conversation was interrupted by Anna and James running toward them, laughing and waving. The children had discovered a small patch of wildflowers and insisted that their mother and Mr. Thompson come see. Maria laughed, feeling a lightness in her chest that had been absent for so long. She realized that the simple joys, sunlight, laughter, flowers, and companionship, had become precious treasures in her life, symbols of the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. Even the townspeople began to celebrate the transformation. They recognized Maria's contributions to the community, from her work on the ranch to her willingness to help neighbors in small but meaningful ways. She had become a symbol of resilience and courage, someone whose actions had inspired admiration and respect. People who had once doubted her now sought her guidance, and children were encouraged to emulate her strength and determination. The widow who had once struggled alone was now a pillar of the community, her presence valued and cherished. Maria often reflected on the lessons of the past year. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, that harsh winters and difficult circumstances could arise again. But she also knew that the strength she had discovered within herself, the support she had received from Mr. Thompson, and the trust she had built with her children and the townspeople had equipped her to face whatever came next. She no longer feared the unknown, for she had learned that courage, honesty, and love could guide her through even the darkest times. As the months passed, Maria's life settled into a rhythm that balanced work, family, and community. She continued to care for the mare, nurture her garden, and support her children's growth. Anna and James thrived in school, their curiosity and intelligence blossoming under the stability and love their mother provided. Maria took pride not only in their physical survival, but in their emotional and intellectual growth, knowing that she had given them the foundation for a bright future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over Red Creek, Maria sat on the porch of her cabin, the mare grazing nearby and her children playing in the yard. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. The hardships she had faced, the death of her husband, the bitter winter, the fear and desperation, had shaped her into someone stronger, more compassionate, and more capable than she had ever imagined. She realized that life, though unpredictable and often harsh, had a way of rewarding courage and resilience with moments of beauty and hope. Maria's story spread beyond the town, carried by travelers and merchants who had heard of the widow who had taken the horse and been met with understanding rather than punishment. It became a tale of bravery, compassion, and the power of kindness, told and retold to inspire others facing hardship. Her life had been transformed not by luck alone, but by the combination of her own courage, the empathy of Mr. Thompson, and the support of a community willing to see beyond first impressions. In the years that followed, Maria's children grew into strong, capable individuals, carrying with them the lessons their mother had taught them about perseverance, honesty, and the importance of caring for others. Maria herself continued to work on the ranch and in the community, always remembering the night when desperation had led her to take a single horse, and how that act, met with unexpected understanding, had changed the course of her life forever. The mare, now older but still strong, remained a faithful companion, a reminder of the courage it had taken to face the darkness and the hope that had followed. And Maria, once a struggling widow on the outskirts of town, had become a symbol of resilience, kindness, and the transformative power of compassion. Her story reminded everyone that even in the harshest circumstances, courage and empathy could create a future filled with hope, opportunity, and love.